Hello and welcome to episode 16 of the Getting Addies podcast. Today I am joined by man of many talents, from what I can hear, Connor Page. Welcome to
Yeah,
the podcast.
nice to be here. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. As I say, we've just had a little chat. It was kind of just a suggestion from a follower, a mutual follower.
Yeah,
And obviously I'm obviously mentioned briefly on the podcast before we start as well that I'm interested in the bodybuilding side of things.
yeah.
So let's go to the beginning.
Okay.
You mentioned personal training.
Yeah.
Did you always be around fitness? Did you always be around?
Well, if you go like far back, I was always a little bit sporty as a person. So like initially my sport growing up was jiu-jitsu. I started off in doing like not Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but Japanese jiu-jitsu, trained by Robert Clark in World Jiu-Jitsu Federation. And he took me in when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And from there, I really excelled at jiu-jitsu, like from an early age, from the get-go. Um, and each year, like I stuck to it, and eventually got my black belt when I was about 13 years old, roughly 13. And then when I left, I had a second dan in weaponry. So for me, I always came from like a little bit of a different sport than most kids. I
Yeah,
was good at football as well, but I was never passionate with like playing football. I like watching it when I was younger, but not as much playing it. But I was always interested in the sports other kids weren't doing. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean? So it was obviously combat training, stuff like that. But as the years went on, because you do something so often, you kind of get a little bit bored of it. So for me, I noticed that even though I could like sort of handle myself, I was never a strong child. But my dad was a weightlifter for like years and years. So I was always wanted to be like my dad, always wanted to be like my dad. And because I was nothing like my dad, I was a skinny kid, ginger hair. My dad's not even ginger. He used to tan. Obviously, look at this, bright red. Do you know what I mean? He was very different to me, even though he was my actual dad, funny
yeah,
enough. I do look like him, just without the ginger, yeah. And kids in the school used to be obsessed with me dad because they're like, "Oh my god, your dad's like the biggest dad in the school." It was always like a little bit of a like, you know what I mean? My dad's like your dad things. But they used to also mock at the fact that I was nothing like that.
right.
So that was a bit of a kick to your ego a bit. So as I started growing up, I had problems because like obviously being ginger and stuff, it's like kind of like the best way to word it is it's like it's very known in England to rip into someone with ginger hair and pick on them. They're like a target. And it's funny how like it today it's good that racism's over. It's very good. Well, not over, but it's getting better than it ever
Yeah,
was. But as far as like people with ginger hair, they can't control the colour of the hair. You can dye it all you want, but it's always going to come back ginger under the root and so forth.
yeah,
And it's funny how we're still primal in our instinct to like sort of insult people with ginger hair, laugh at them. You're always seen as lower, like you are seen as quite lower down than the average person. So for me, growing up in school, like girls used to laugh at me for the way I looked, like Joe, the works. I was skinny, ginger. I was a target, so I used to get like picked on quite a bit. So for me, I started going to the gym, and that was my little bit of escapism.
yeah,
Obviously, kids do different things. Some kids smoke pot, whatever, drink parties. I love the gym, and I noticed when I was going to the gym, I started getting stronger and stronger, and a little bit bigger than the other kids who were going.
yeah,
Because I
yeah,
was a bit more focused. um, and for me, I was putting all the pain I had from school, from growing up, like the works, and I put it into the gym. And obviously, pain turns to power, doesn't it? I started to grow, look better than other kids and stuff. And then when I was about 13, 14, I started noticing like I started having like a little bit of problems with sort of like nerve issues, and I couldn't stop having involuntary movements. Obviously, you can hear it with my voice. And it took them 4 years to discover I had Tourette syndrome.
right.
And it's quite debilitating for anyone who doesn't really understand. It's seen as like some massive joke, like in the
Yeah,
community, of like, oh, he swears. But the majority of people don't understand that Tourette's is actually the opposite of Parkinson's,
right.
which is quite severe.
Yeah, of
Like
course.
obviously people don't laugh at Parkinson's, but they like sort of joke at Tourette's. Being the main differences with Parkinson's, the dopamine is very low and the gland doesn't release very much of it.
Okay.
But so with Tourette syndrome,
So,
that same gland releases too much,
yeah.
and it causes to have like little electrical impulses, kind of like how Parkinson's has constant jolts. We have big jolts, and from that point on, I could either sit there and feel sorry for myself, or I could get up and I was like, all right, I've got this problem, I've been through this, but what else are you gonna throw at me? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, of course.
I'm just gonna go for this bodybuilding because that's all I've got. I wasn't good in school, I wasn't clever, I've never been massively talented at anything. So that was my like that
That
was
was your
my
drive.
yeah, 100%.
So when you mentioned you got diagnosed with Tourette's, what was that like
Yeah,
after then? Was because obviously you said you got bullied for being ginger, you get this, and then
yeah.
you get thrown Tourette's as well.
Do
Um,
you believe that?
did
Yeah.
what was that like? I mean, what was that like for you?
Yeah, so for okay, so I knew something wasn't right before I got diagnosed. I was always told by doctors it was anxiety. I was always told it was just a twitch. It'll go. My own dad was like, stop it, it's a habit, stop it," which makes it worse.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you're trying to suppress it. I couldn't listen in class because I was too concerned of something's about to. I'm about to make a weird noise, and I
yeah,
knew, but it was shameful. You're like, "Oh, I don't want to make this noise." Because kids stop and stare. Even adults do it today. Like you make a noise, someone will, do you know what I mean? They look. Uh, so I was looking online and came across the Everton goalkeeper from years ago,
okay,
and he had Tourette syndrome, and I was like, oh, he doesn't seem to swear. And I looked more into it, and I was like, oh my god, I've got this. Like everything he's saying is what I do.
right,
Um, and then it took a little bit of a joke as you realise. I think this is what's wrong with me all these years. And my mum's a nurse, and I went up to my mum and I said to her, "Look, I think I know what I've got." And she was like, "No, no, no, no," because I think she didn't want to sort of like give
is
me a
the
false
right word?
diagnosis. Yeah, because like, that's another bad thing you can do. But we went to the doctor and I told him like everything, told him how it feels, and he was like, "Yeah, I think you've got Tourette syndrome." So it was a bit of a kick in the teeth a little bit, like to go from like already being a target to then having a sign on my head saying I make weird noises too. Do you know what I mean? But that's
Um,
I was out with it, not well.
but moving forward from there, but I mean,
Mm,
you've had all this thrown at you.
yeah,
You must be thinking to yourself like, "Fucking, what else can be thrown at me then? I've done
yeah,
everything you want me to fucking do. Let's go," sort
yeah.
of thing. You must be
That's literally it. It was
very
kind of like
strong-minded.
it was kind of like a fight or flight moment. Like I was, as I said, just gonna accept my fate and be like, oh, I'll never do nothing with my life, live on like disability living allowance, you know, the sort of works. But like my mum's always put like a little bit of a mentality into me of life. It could be worse. It could always be worse.
Yeah,
As you've probably seen that quote where it says, "A man's crying because he hasn't got the new trainees, and next to him's a kid who's got no feet."
yeah,
Do you know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. Of course.
So that's the way it took. It was like, look, they could always be worse. What have I got? I've still got a full body. Okay, it mightn't do what I always wanted to do,
Yeah,
but it does it 90% of the time.
yeah. And
So
when you compete and stuff, do you still naturally have um twitches? Is twitch the right word?
yeah, Twitch tick. I think tick's
Tick.
the main word, but
Yes.
it's the same thing, yeah. So this is the interesting thing with Tourette syndrome.
Go on.
Um, Generally, when people with Tourette syndrome focus on one thing and one thing only,
Hmm.
what happens is the ticks they don't seem to appear. They go quite like suppressed because I don't understand how the dopamine actually works at that time. But when you're focused on something, your body goes into like ultimate homeostasis because it's concerned with like the outside world.
Yeah.
So it wants to be level. So when I'm focused in the gym and I'm doing a set exercise, the ticks go. When I'm on stage, because I'm so concerned of like these judges, I'm looking at a specific judge every time I go on. There's a whole board of them, but I look at one and I'm so focused on him that they don't seem to just appear, maybe little lip movements, but they seem to be quite suppressed. And I think it's a lot to do with like my diet at the time, the compounds I'm using, and obviously like being focused. So I'm lucky in that sense. It doesn't really appear when I'm on stage.
So you mentioned that when you're training, you don't have any or
No,
very little.
yeah. But when I come
Wow.
out the gym, they all reappear. The second I stop training, it's like a spring that you can press
And it just
and pop. Yeah,
wow. That's incredible.
yeah.
So as I mentioned before, and whilst we're on the um subject of Tourette's, I listened to a podcast that you were recently on, and you mentioned a Spanish airport.
Oh yeah.
What was that like? So to whoever's not listened, just give a background of this story. Like
Okay.
when I was listening, I was
So
like, nah, no, of course not,
yeah.
no.
Oh yeah. So I was in the airport in Spain many years ago, and these things you don't say in the airport. However, me having Tourette's is I am basically a duck in water at this point, which makes it worse. So I was in the Spanish airport and I seen, do you know the things that carry the suitcase around?
Yeah,
Now it was going in a revolving motion because it was
right.
going around in a circle. However, my brain decided now's a perfect time for me to shout revolver across the airport. At which point I can see the security guards coming over with the guns, and I'm going, oh no, they didn't do anything anyway. I think they had an idea something was wrong with me by the time they got there. But it was that initial, what have I done? Do you know, I'm in a foreign airport. I can't speak Spanish, obviously. So how am I going to explain I've got Tourette syndrome to them and for them to believe it too? It's like, oh, mate. I seen them coming over and my dad literally just went, what have you just said? And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And I was bad. I was like, I could feel it coming. I was going, but I didn't have an idea what was coming, and it just went
Right.
revolver dead loud. I was like, here we go.
So you don't know what you're going to say at that point then.
It's so it can vary so much. So I get 3 seconds before something comes out. I have an idea of what's going to get said, but not
Right.
fully. But I've got a type of Tourette syndrome called echolalia. I can't pronounce it properly, but it's on them lines because you're corporelia, paralalia, and echolalia, and I've got that one. So mine's like a parrot. So I pick up on things and I generally repeat things that I say or something I see or something I hear. Where corporelia is specific to whatever the filter is in the brain they say.
Okay.
So it can come across quite racist or offensive to them, even though they don't want to say these things. They know they're about to say it and they have no way out. Theirs is the worst condition of the all. But the worst condition of threat, I think it's only like 1 to 10% of people have it. And even within corporelia, these levels of corporelia, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but
Because
yeah.
the first time I came across Tourette's would have been was it Pete that went on Big Brother
Yeah,
a
forgot about it, yeah.
few years ago. So it was over a decade ago, but that's the first time I came across. I mean Tourette's and the awareness
Yeah,
of it, if you like, because where we're from, it's like a really small town sort of thing. Like I think there was like 400 kids in the whole school, in the
yeah.
high school, really really small school. So, and then I mean, if like I mean, it was just one of them.
Yeah.
It's like,
It goes round because yeah, I understand. It's see when he came on telly as well. Do you remember at the time they were like, Pete, shut up, like you can't say these things, you can't say, and obviously they didn't understand as that's the TV for you. They kind of like, not the best with the way they are. So I remember they gave him a pillow to shout into. It was like, can't they just accept him for who he is? And it was like, and a lot of the time people used to be like, he's faking it. It's fake. He puts it on for show, and it's shocking, isn't it? How the world like perceives it when they don't understand it. But I think from Pete's point of view, I think for a man who had to go through all that, a lot of hate from a lot of public, he had the TV themselves like ripping into him and like sort of emphasized on his tics a lot. I think he came out like pretty well for like what he done. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't think they'd have the same response now.
No,
They
no,
wouldn't be
definitely not.
able to have the same response now.
Mm,
With a lot of movements going forward.
yeah,
Obviously, we've had the Black Lives Matter movements. We've got Pride Month this month and stuff like this. All the movements now, I mean, they're amazing, and there's
yeah,
a
I
lot
agree.
more awareness towards everything, and there's a lot more acceptance towards everything now as well, which
Yeah,
is how it should be. It's
it
how it
is.
should be doing. It doesn't matter color of the hair, doing color skin.
Yeah,
It's how it should be.
it is. It's good like that because like I think it shows you've moved on as a society, doesn't it? Like we no longer emphasize on people's weaknesses. Not that it's a weakness, but people's differences, I'd say, and zone into that because it's like people still have the like predatory like pecking order in society. Like in schools, it's always use the hardest kid of the class.
Yeah,
Work, it's use the boss of the like. Did you know what I mean?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
nice to see that like we're slowly drifting into like a more everyone's equal society, which I'd like to see myself.
Yeah, it's and as I say, decade from now, we'd be looking back going, "Fucking hell."
I
Remember a couple of
agree.
decades ago, we would
Yeah,
discuss and this happened. It'd be frowned upon
yeah,
massively.
yeah.
Um,
It would.
so I want to move towards the bodybuilding side of things. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
because as I
Okay,
mentioned,
let's go.
from someone who's very interested in nutrition, my background's from nutrition, only recently gone through personal training and started training people. Um, it amazes me what the body can do, first of all,
Yeah,
but it also amazes me what supplements can do to a body as well.
yeah,
So you started off natural bodybuilding.
I do. Yeah.
My first question is, why did you switch?
Okay. So when I started off natural bodybuilding, I was adamant I was going to stay natural,
Yeah,
as everyone else is. I was adamant, and I competed for many years being natural. I'd done natural federations and I'd done open federations where steroids were allowed, but I still remained natural. However, I noticed there was a big difference in not the sense of the federations themselves or the competitors. It's just when you go from a natural federation, I'm just going to put it outright, is absolutely silly and pathetic. The fact that they say their athletes are natural, they're not natural, they're drug tested. There's a big difference. You see many people who can fraud a lot of these like Olympic teams for many years and never get caught. Many boxers currently taken never get caught. It's very shocking.
yeah,
So I think if you're going to compete naturally. Joe, like
yeah,
don't just do it for the trophy, like because it's easy to pass a drug test. Many steroids can be out your system in 3 days. Honestly, three. Like all those steroids are out your system very quickly, and won't come up on a drug test, on a urine test. Now most drug tests are urine
yeah,
tests, and what they do is they get, and then they have that response where they go, "Oh, we do a polygraph test." You can pass a polygraph very easily. Do you know what I mean? It's someone
yeah.
who generally believes they can pass a test, will pass a polygraph test. They just need to believe it. And the same with taking a beta blocker. But yeah, it's a very different world. So the reason I took was because I already won a British title naturally in an open federation.
Right.
And a lot of people would be like, oh, no, that's not, it is very possible to do it because they've done it. But however, I wasn't the biggest athlete. I was nowhere near the biggest athlete. I just came in on an insanely shredded like body, you know, compared to the other teenagers. There was a big noticeable difference between me and them. So that's why I won, because obviously I got down to levels that they were getting to. And I know I couldn't beat them on size, but I knew I could beat them on two fields. One was symmetry and one was condition, and that's what I've done. So once I won that, I had goals in place before I ever thought about taking. One was I'd never take it as a teenager because I think it's absolutely silly when you see teenagers taking it. Absolutely silly. And then number two, I wanted to at least win something big before, because there's no point in me taking it if I didn't have the genetics there to do it in the first place.
Okay. So this is what my thing was going to be now about young
Yeah.
young adults. I'm not going to patronize and say children, because they're not children. They're young adults who might have finished school, started college, started going out on the lads doing 17, 18,
Yeah.
19,
Yeah.
not even 19, 16 to 18, thinking,
Yeah.
right, I want to go to a gym. They hit a protein shake after the gym, see no results after 3, 4, 5 weeks.
That
That's
munches.
it. That's it. I mean, they're eating clean. They're having one egg in the morning with bread, and they're having like some like 300, 200, 2,000 calories a day maximum, maybe.
Yeah.
And they're wondering why they're not growing. So then the decision is steroids. I'm going to go straight to steroids.
Yeah.
You mentioned you weren't a teenager, which fair play, because a
Yeah.
lot of people could have done it earlier on, and a lot of people do it early on and then claim to be natural. And
You see it all the time.
I respect the transparency in it and the honesty,
Yeah.
saying I'm not natural, like a bit on and off, no
Yeah.
problem, sort of thing. But my biggest thing is when you've got a lot of trainers. I'm in the field now. I'm probably one of the smallest trainers in Liverpool, and no fucks given, because it's not about me. It's
Yeah.
not. I've got my own
You're making
journey.
your clients better, not yourself at the end of the day.
It's not about my journey. I'm on my own journey, focusing on my jiu-jitsu. I'm not going to be competing at any point in bodybuilding. But a lot of people will sell, so they'll get completely shredded, get on gear, do 6 or 8 weeks. I don't know what cycles, as you can see. I'm just going figures here. Get a couple of photo shoots done, and they use them photos then for the rest of the year
Yeah.
to get clients and
Yeah.
say that they're fully natural. And that is one of my biggest pet hates.
I know.
They'll stand on it because maybe they don't know actually what they're taking.
So,
I mean, what's your point on that?
okay, so this is something that you'll come across a lot. A lot of coaches, it's 50-50. So you've got a lot of coaches who generally are looking out for this kid and think the kid's not taking nothing.
Yeah.
And they're looking at this kid's results going, bloody hell, he's doing like really well. Oh my God, I can't believe it. So, but what the kid's not telling the coach is, because he's scared to tell the coach, because he knows the coach is going to say, don't take them. And the kid doesn't want to hear, don't take them. And I'll say kid because, you know what I mean, like teenager.
Yeah, of course.
However you want to say it. He doesn't want to hear from his coach, don't take it. Because in his head, he wants the fame, the muscles, the girls or boys, whatever he wants. He wants attention.
He wants the lot.
Yeah, he wants the lot. So he's not going to tell his coach. So what's going to be happening is he's going to be smunching these little tablets, having a little jab now and then, telling his coach, oh yeah, no, honestly, I'm natural, this, that. Coach believes it, uploads the pictures and thinks he's the Don Juan of dieting, the guru. And then on the other end of the scale, what you get is a lot of drug dealers who are coaches. And a lot of people won't like me saying that, but you get a lot of drug dealer coaches. And even if they are one, as long as like they're not harming anyone, doing it, you know, each their own. However you make your bread is however you make your bread. No judgment on that. But what you'll get a lot, this is just fact, is a lot of them will be selling to the younger generation, make an extra couple of quid, and also get them awesome results through the gear and the rest, and then upload the pictures for their own benefit. So then all their mates in, say, college or high school or whatever they're in is then going to go to that coach and be like, help me, mate, how can you help him out? And his mate's going to be like, yeah, I'll buy a couple. And yeah.
Snowball effect, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And it, as far as business, just business goes, it's good business.
Yeah.
But however ethics go, it's very, it's not ethical to put a young teenager or teenager on steroids, in my opinion.
And it also goes to, would it be easier or would it be safer, is the right word, for steroids to be prescription sort of thing? So you have to go to a doctor, go to a registered someone, and I know you can get anything from anywhere. I know it's very far-fetched, but it would be much safer for that lad or female, whatever, because there's a lot of females on it as well, to go to a doctor or to a registered like dietitian sort of thing to get
Yeah.
the tablets and check that they're doing the cycle properly. And even when it comes to competition, right? So X, Y, and Z here are all, they've took this, this, and this, so that's their competition sort of thing. So the categories, they're in the right category, everything's more legit, if you like.
Yeah.
Would that would make it safer for younger generation now who
So
haven't naturally grown yet? Do you know what I mean?
I think personally, if you were to do it, I think you need to have a license, and not just the person giving them, but the person wanting to take a license to prove you've got no past history of any medical issues, you've got no past aggression history or any violence, sort of things. Or if you have, obviously you like it was something minor. Or, you get what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, of
Just
course.
going to be safe with it or no addiction. But what you do have doctors who do prescribe it. However, they prescribe a very select few, and you have to obviously meet the criteria for it. For say someone who's 50 years old,
Yeah,
who's not producing testosterone, or someone who's obviously got dwarfism, might get prescribed growth hormones. You can get prescribed it, but you're only going to get prescribed it if you need it,
yeah,
and that's the difference. Most people don't need it. In fact, I'd say probably 90% of people don't need it. It's very rare cases where people need it. But I think if people want to use it, I think it should be legal. Should be, in my opinion. It's a class C, so you can legally use it. You can't sell it or buy it. But I think there should be a place for you to kind of like get it without
yeah.
having to go through obviously dodgy sources.
You mentioned the license is the same as buying a gun. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
You want
yeah,
to sell a gun, you've got to have a license to buy it, and if you've got to
yeah,
buy the gun, you've got to be able. Do you know what I mean? It works both ways, and it's the same
yeah.
sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? It's dangerous. It can be. Do you know what I mean? It can be
It
life
can be,
threatening for a lot of people, especially if it's not
yeah.
used correctly. It can be harmful. And as you say, I mean, you look at history of a lot of, I mean, criminal sort of things. You look at the history. Do they meet the criteria? And I mean, that's a big thing. I think that should be
Yeah.
moving forward. Um, so for someone like me, I couldn't like you can imagine how Phil does. I mean, it's one of them where you're like,
Yeah.
where like yeah, I'm just like baffled by it all. To be fair, so
Yeah.
once like obviously I understand a little bit about a little bit. So obviously cycling, you got TRT, Anavan, all this. I know a little bit about it, but when obviously you're competing, so say now you've got a show 10, 12 weeks away.
Yeah.
What would be your
My cycle.
routine cycle diet?
Okay.
How does it fit
So
with your food and all this as well?
I'll spread it out for you.
Go on.
So for many years, I've done very different diets. I've done very different cycles. I've been there, done it all. However, these healthier ways to do it and these unhealthier ways to do it. Now, for me to tell someone to do this isn't, I can't do that because
Yeah,
every person's very different.
yeah,
Every diet you put someone on is going to respond differently to it. You probably know as a coach yourself. I'm personally not a very big advocate for calorie counting. That's just my sort of
yeah,
thing for it, because I think the basis of calorie counting is to be accurate. However, it's tough to be accurate with your calories if you don't know accurately how many you burn per day,
yeah.
and you don't know accurately your metabolism, how the rate at which your metabolisms burn the calories. A fart burns 10 calories a day. Would you believe that? A fart burns 10 calories a day. So people fart like 30, 40 times a day. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like it's tough to accurately give someone a calorie and for them to make the exact same changes per week, which you've probably noticed with clients. Like they'll fluctuate like up and down, like a bit of
yeah,
yo-yo sometimes, even if they stick to it. However, what I am a bit of an advocate for is more ketogenic based diets.
right.
Now I know that's a big, obviously, an area people don't like talking about, but I think people with disabilities, specific disabilities, it works very well for. And for people who obviously don't feel a diet work, because generally when you get someone on diet, the first thing they lose is water weight.
Yeah.
And a lot of major companies know this. Like, obviously, I'm not going to say the full name, but I'd say Scale Observers instead of what
Yeah.
like the company names.
Yeah. Not going to get done for slandering.
Yeah, not going to say the company names, but they know that a steady diet, the first thing you lose is water weight.
Yeah.
And you'll see people who get little awards on them saying, I've lost 6 pounds this week, and so forth. And we both know it's water. So by the time they get 3 weeks into the diet, they might have a little sneaky cheat meal, because everyone does. And they'll throw the weight back on, or even more, and then they're very confused and they're like, oh, what do I need to do? I need to get back on the double syllable diet.
You know what? It's really weird, because I've had a conversation with a client over the last couple of days.
Yeah.
He was on it's like a 3-number diet. It's a silly fucking name. And he was on this diet, and they put it into steps for him. So they break it into steps. So week 1, you get two meals a day, which are 400-calorie meals. 2 shakes a day, not meals. They're just shakes. Week 2, you get 4 shakes a day. All 4 are 200-calorie shakes a day. Week 3, you get 3 shakes a day. So it splits to maximum 1,500. Okay. He's been with me now for 5 weeks, and I've done videos about this before, so he knows I speak about it, and I'm very open about it. And he, come to the 3rd week, he said to me, "I've put 300 grams on from my first week." Now, no problem. And he goes, "I put money into you to lose weight." No, you put money into me to change your ways, to be sustainable. I said to you, it won't be a quick fix, because I'm not about that. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in, if you want me to restrict your calories, I'll do it, but I don't believe in it. You should be losing the least amount of weight, eating the most amount of calories.
Yeah.
Because that is the way forward. That's how sustainable, that's how you're going to be sustainable in life further from after being with me for 12 weeks. That's how I want you to go forward. I want you to be able to enjoy your life. I want you to be able to go out and not feel guilty for eating food. I want you to, and the mentality he's got now is, if I don't lose weight, I am failing. And it's all because of these dieting companies and the diet things that he's been on that has
drummed it
into, if you don't lose weight week from week, you are failing. And I told him, right at the end of the 4 weeks, at the end of the month, I said, listen, do another photo, because you're scared of doing the progress photos, scared of the scales. I said, forget the scales, not touching them ever again. I don't want to know about them. Just take photos. And he put 2 photos next to each other, mate, and the difference was ridiculous, but the weight was not.
That's the thing. It's all, see, for instance, these 2 things that have been drummed into society with diet. One is the scales, and I can't believe what the other one's gone. Oh yeah, and the other is carbohydrates. You see, and fats. So what you'll see in a lot of shops today is 0 fat this, 0 fat that, low fat, and everyone thinks, oh, it's low fat, it means I won't put weight on.
It's healthy, I can have loads of it.
It's the opposite way around. You eat a proper original Greek style yogurt, that's going to do much better for you than any low fat yogurt on the planet, because the fats are not the enemy. People, these are reason in like, this is from my knowledge over the years, like from what I've seen with like on my own body, is these are reason it's called essential fatty acids and essential amino acids. You haven't got essential carbohydrates. Carbohydrates is something as humans we've eaten just to gain weight and to heat up our bodies. So, for instance, you can have someone who's on a very high fat diet, low carbs, very low, very high protein, and they'll never, like, they won't put weight on, because I think a lot of times the way these companies out there that done fake studies, you probably know about this yourself, a set drinking company, very famous, done a fake study to show fat was the enemy and sugar wasn't. And the reason they done that was to boost their own company. And that same study has now been passed down over the years and years into today's society, where they assume fat is the enemy. Because it's got the same name as visceral fat and fat, it's not the same thing whatsoever. Do you know what I mean? It's a fascinating, to be honest with you.
So this is one of the questions that was asked. Why is it so good for bodybuilding? And why is it better than calories in versus calorie out? Or if your macros fit? If it fits your macros, sorry. So why is keto good for bodybuilding? From my point of view, I'm going to speak from someone who's never done bodybuilding. The understanding I've got is by taking away the water, will obviously give you that more shredded look. But am I right in thinking before you go on stage, you would have a high carb meal to make yourself look even bigger again?
Yeah.
Right, okay, I've got the understanding right then, because as I say, I know a little bit, but not enough, if that makes sense. Because I know.
I'll explain it all for you. So what happens is, generally the last week is, every coach is so different, and this is where they get the money from the clients mostly, is the final peak week. Because if you don't hit it, you can either make yourself look 5% better or 50% worse this 1 week.
Right.
Because a lot of sodium manipulation, potassium manipulation, water intake, water out, and vitamins. But what we do is, generally we lower the carbs. A lot of coaches, not all. The last one I worked with actually upped them a little bit. But generally what I done was I lowered my carbs a few weeks out before the contest, and then by the time it was, obviously I was drinking a lot of water and I was flushing them out of my body. And just before the stage, about the day before, I'd guzzle loads of carbs in. The reason I'd do that is because your muscle is 80% water.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if there's no water in your body, the muscle isn't going to look good. The muscle gets very stringy and looks really bad. So generally 3 days before the contest, you don't look your best. You look like you're not ready. And then on the day, you pop. And the reason you pop is because your insulin spikes. When your insulin spikes, it floods the muscles full of the carbohydrates you just shoveled in. And it makes you look about 15 pounds bigger in muscle. It's all illusion. So yeah, we guzzle carbs, like generally not all, obviously a day or 2 or 3 before the show, depending on the body.
And that's quite similar to when I've done weight cuts with boxers and MMA fighters. 10, 12 days out, we'll start water loading. I mean, some up to 10 litres of water. For 3 days. Last week, we'll take away the sodium, take away the carbs. We'd really lower it down, so the water weight comes down. When the weight cuts there, it just drops off. Replenishing it then. You've got the replenishing drinks, you've got the meals and stuff. Then they go in, and say 15, 20 pounds in. I mean, some athletes go one fight, they go into a 170 fight at 182, 189. Do I mean?
It's massive, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all illusion. See, for the boxer, obviously they're doing it because there's more pounds on the body, it hits harder. For the bodybuilder, as I said, we don't look at scales as much as people assume we do.
Right. Okay.
And as a coach yourself, the mirror's your best friend, and it's not you looking in the mirror yourself. It's someone else's eyes looking at you through the mirror. So, for instance, your mood can massively affect the way you think you look.
Yeah.
So if you feel low and you stand in front of the mirror, I guarantee you'll feel worse. And if you feel good, you could look in the mirror and think you look better than you actually do.
Yeah.
But that's the benefit of having someone like yourself who looks at clients and goes, look, okay, you look better or you look worse. You're going to be brutally honest because you're a great coach. And that's what clients need. But a lot of clients, as you said, are fixated on that scale. They're fixated on it.
And the same with calories. Some clients I've got will tell me I don't want a calorie count, or I want to track my macros, and I'm like, Sam, no problem at all. Don't have to. Not bothered. But if it comes to a point where I mean, your weight's going like this, and your goal is to lose it, then we need to have a quick look. Are you active enough? I mean, are you lying about anything? Your sodium intake, I mean, we'll look at all these factors. And the last one would then be you're looking at your diet. Like, obviously, we look at diet, but really nailing down how much of everything you're actually eating. Because, I mean, you can say, oh, I don't want a calorie count and all this, but I mean, you have 15 packs of Space Raiders and this, that, and the other. And I mean, you wonder then, why have I put 10 pounds on this week?
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? It's absolutely mad.
I've just seen the rain outside, mate. Wow.
yeah.
Banging on the window.
No, it's crazy. But yeah, it is fascinating. Like, it's mad how everybody works. We're all humans, right? But we all work so differently, depending on our like insulin sensitivity. But I'll get back to obviously the juicy bit that you want to hear is so as far as anabolics go, as I said, these are big variety of them, just like sweets in a candy shop. These are big variety of steroids. Steroids aren't just testosterone. There's many different variants of testosterone, and obviously, from experimenting, when I do a show, I think my best ever cycle was obviously something equipoise and winstrol and testosterone, and I'd removed the testosterone a week out before the show. That was my probably best, more healthy cycle that I'd done. However, the last show I did experiment with trenbolone, which is the notorious trend, this, and I'll tell you from personal experience, it's not fun. It's not a nice compound, and I wouldn't recommend people do it.
Right, okay. What were the effects of that then? So, first of all, what were the bad effects from it? Because I'm fucking excited for this.
Okay. So,
because I know you know what, I love you're going to be completely honest to me as well, and I love it.
Yeah. So the first, I didn't get this shot. I didn't get this straight away, but this is one that I found after a few like goes with it. Is you get something called Trenkov. Now, when you get Trenkov, you don't know it's coming. So as you put the injection in, if generally you're supposed to aspirate before you inject to make sure it's not gone through an artery or a vein or there's no air bubble. That's the basis behind it. However, the veins run through your body like this. So a needle can go through a vein, you aspirate, and it's not going to pick up any blood because it's perfectly gone through it. However, when you pull the needle out, blood comes out. So a lot of time you're thinking you're in a vein. That's the whole point of the aspiration, but you're not. You've passed the vein, you've cut it open and went through. So what happens is when you do tren and there's an open vein, it's unlike any other steroid because it decides to shoot around your body very quickly, and you get this excruciating pain through your chest, like heartburn you've never felt before. And they call it the 911 drug in America because you have this crazy panic attack where you drop to your knees and go, this is it, I'm gone. This is how I die. But you don't, but you just have that. And you're the panic, the rush, your body's cortisol shoots up. You get wheezing on your lung, you can taste it around your mouth. It's a horrible compound. It's not even designed for humans. It was designed for cattle, literally, to put muscle on them, to sell them in America.
But that's the same with ketamine. It's supposed to be for horses, and people still...
Well, equipoise is designed for horses. However, equipoise was a lot safer than trenbolone. But trenbolone gets even worse because it originally came from a tablet called Finaplex.
Right.
And these were implants they were putting into the cattle. But someone decided, let's take this Finaplex, crush it down and make an oil from it. So you'll never, ever, ever, ever see trenbolone acetate made in a pharmacy. The closest that they had to it was something called parabolan, and that came with 75 milligram. So yeah, that's the history of it.
What were they doing to try all this?
So exactly.
It's like the story of when the first farmer milked the cow. What was he doing?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Exactly. It baffles my head. What were they actually doing?
Baffles me. But yeah, that's where it came from. However, it's an amazing bodybuilding drug.
Right.
So it does, as bad as it is, it has absolutely amazing results. But what you'll get today is a lot of kids who jump on trend and jump on. It's the strongest steroid there is, and you'll get people who jump on it for the first cycle, and it's like it baffles you because steroids aren't like other drugs in the world. If this is any other drug you take, whether it's alcohol, cigarettes, or cocaine, whatever you take, you're gonna feel it instantly. That's the effect of the drug. Or you're gonna, the moment you feel the drug, you know it's the drug. Steroids don't work like that because it's a hormone. So steroids slowly change you as a person. So what happens with me when I first was unaware of this was I thought people around me were being really annoying, and it was the other people. And you're convinced it's the other people because you think there's nothing wrong with you at the time. However, you start getting snappy, irritable, and you do start changing as a person when you're on them. And the problem is, it doesn't make you some animal who's going to kill people. That's all a myth. Roid rage is generally a myth.
Right.
It really is. But it will make you a very snappy person. And the problem is, because you're convinced it's other people, you don't think it's you until you come off the steroids. And then you go, oh, why was I like people? And then it's kind of like, like the post-cum syndrome, where you pop your bean and you're like, oh, no way, what have I done? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's the
yeah,
same
yeah.
thing with that. Do you get with it?
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
mad. It's mad. And you mentioned hormone, and I'm gonna. It's not in my notes. This is clip, right? And I want your honest opinion. And
Yeah.
we're now in a thing where my miss is going to kick off me for asking this.
No,
Where
go on.
about transgenders now competing in
Okay.
the other opposite category, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So, if I have been a male for X many years, then competing in female weightlifting,
mm-hmm.
what should be the gap? Because obviously there's a big topic now about the Olympics this year.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'm all for transgenders being able to compete. On that scale of yes,
okay, I'll tell you.
What should be, because obviously testosterone levels should be at a certain level. There should be hormone. I mean, what should be the?
Okay, I'll tell you my view on it. It's very very straightforward. Now, biology wise, a male hasn't just got higher testosterone. It's not just higher testosterone. It's thicker bone density. Bone density is such a big impact on sports itself. You can have a male who's got lower testosterone, and you can still see the difference between a male born and a female born.
Right.
Because his bone density is very different. Not just that, the way we transform hormones and our receptor sites are also very different. So going off a biology standpoint, our receptors are different, our bones are different, and our hormones itself are different. Now, you can get a female who takes testosterone for a number of weeks, develops more muscle, develops the features like the Adam's apple and so forth. Now, that's only one of three aspects have changed. Bone density may have got a little bit thicker through the testosterone, but she hasn't had years and years of ridiculously high testosterone levels. Right. Now, when a female takes testosterone, we generally take a TRT dosage. So that could be any range between 100 milligram a week, 75 milligram a week, up until like 250 milligram a week or so on. When you go through a puberty stage as a male, your testosterone levels are ridiculously high. It's like a steroid. It's like taking a fair dosage of a steroid because then changes are needed to make the massive changes within the male genome and stuff. Now, also the difference is when we have that massive change in our testosterone, our receptors themselves, the uptake of them, will only take in so much, but with the chromosomes, we take in a larger amount of testosterone. Say for instance, you inject 100 milligram into one person A and person B. Person A might get 98 milligram of that 100 injected.
Yeah.
The other person might only get 20 milligram.
Right.
Because
Okay.
what happens is conversion. Now, I don't know if you had it when you were a teenager, but a lot of teenagers get something, male teenagers, called gynecomastia. Now, that's breast tissue that forms on one of the nipples.
Right.
I had it personally before I took steroids. I got it more so when I did obviously take them too, but I did have it naturally. Now, what that is when you take too much testosterone, it'll convert into either estrogen or progesterone.
Yeah.
Being a female, it's generally progesterone and estrogen as well, or mostly progesterone. That's what makes boobs. And that's what makes the milk like prolactin. So being a male, we generally just converted a bit of estrogen, nothing major. Being a female body, you inject too much testosterone, they're massively going to convert to progesterone and estrogen. So no matter how much of a hormone they take, they're still always going to convert more than a male. So on an Olympic standpoint, if a female athlete wants to take testosterone and compete in the males, that's her doing so. If she loses, she's got to realise there is a disadvantage to her.
Yeah.
However, when a male crosses over to the female zone, as far as the female athletes go, I don't think it's fair. I think the naturally born females, I don't think it's fair whatsoever, because there is a big difference in bone structure that's already happened. There is a big difference in obviously other things that have already taken place, because the effects of steroids or testosterone are quite permanent. A female who's never taken hormones and is competing against someone who's naturally been releasing hormones for 10 years, 5 years, however long,
Yeah.
the person who's already had them released for 5 years is going to have an advantage. It's just like scientific studies have shown how one cycle of steroids can have permanent results. I think if for the transgenders, I think if they're male to female, they should be in their own category, and if female to male should be in their own category as well. There should be 4 categories to be fair, in my opinion.
But the other issue is now there's not enough at that level to create a separate category. And if I was to turn it into MMA or boxing or jiu-jitsu, and I had a male, a son or a daughter, and they were to go to that level, let's say a daughter, they would go to that level, and they were fighting for a world title. Let's say fighting for a world title. But before I go and say what I'm going to say, I've got nothing against transgender. This is just from the biological side of things, the hormones. But then if she was at the highest right, to compete against a female who was once a man at that level, it'd be a strange feeling, I think.
Yeah, it would be very different.
We don't condone men hitting women on the streets. Do I mean? And obviously, there's a difference in it. The difference, obviously, is now stuff, but the whole standpoint on it would be a little different.
Yeah, it is. It's very different. It's very different. It's just the times.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
And I agree with making 4 categories. And I think
4 categories. I think, but then obviously from there on, you're then going to get people who say, "Oh, there's more than 4 so forth." But for me, I think 4 categories is very fair. 4. I think that's fair to the other community and fair to the obviously the people who aren't very educated in it. I think it's I'd say 4 categories is a bare minimum.
Because there's a thing now that people might take what I've just said there out of context.
Yeah, they will. 100%. No matter who you are.
Because and you can see I'm scared of saying something wrong.
Oh no, yeah. Well, that's the thing.
It's also having an opinion, and it's also having doing it from an educational standpoint, not discrimination. It's also being unaware. Like I'm getting an education lesson tonight from you, because you're telling me stuff that I have not got a clue about, and I'm sure people who are listening will go, "Fucking hell, I didn't know that." Okay, this. I mean, and the people will agree with what we're saying. Some will disagree, and that's okay. And it's not as saying that they shouldn't be changing from a male to female. It's just saying that There should be separate categories where you go, right, this is this, this is this.
Yeah.
And that's
See,
it.
even me today, I'm always going to be learning. There's always going to be someone who knows more about this field than me, who probably school me, absolutely school me, and I'll be sat there like, whoa. But from my knowledge up to current date, is obviously I do believe in the 4 categories, only for the fairness of each and every athlete, because it's not fair on one side, it's not fair on the other. It's kind of like Robin Hood, isn't it? One man's heroes, another man's like suffer. Like, do you know what I mean? That's what I mean. It's not. It's tough to say. So the only way you can make this fair is create more categories, and the whole point of categories is to divert people anyway. So if that's the best way they can do it. However, obviously, there's a big difference. So from me taking steroids, I can tell you right now, it does make a big difference. However, it's not as big as a difference as people think it is.
Right. Okay.
So, what steroids aren't this magic pill. They never have been, never will be. You get a lot of athletes. If you remove steroids from the picture, the top athletes will always be the top athletes.
Yeah.
You add steroids to the picture, the athletes are the exact same. What I am for is I do believe steroids should be in sports. And the fact is, the reason I say that is because steroids are in sports.
Yeah.
They're in every single sport. There is a performance tablet. There's some form of performance in every sport there is. Whether you're a fighter pilot, whether you're a golfer, or people are like, oh my God, how can he be a golfer and takes the performance enhancements? He can. When you look at Tiger Woods, he had laser eye surgery when his eyes were already perfect, which made his eyes even more clear. In a sport that's based upon perception, would that not be cheating?
It's the same with in UFC where TJ Dillashaw was caught with performance enhancing drugs. He had a 5-round fight, and I shit you not, he did not gas once. He looked incredible. The commentary was like, "This is the best TJ we'll ever see." 2 weeks later, he gets popped and gets a 2-year ban for it. So, and same with is it Miller, the boxer? He's had a couple of years ban. He's now back. Somehow got his license back, and it's one of them where either you let everyone on it, or you go super strict on it, and you change the way testing's been done. Because in some sports like UFC, you've got USADA, people are still getting caught. So
the whole drug testing, in my opinion, is silly. It's absolutely silly. The people who fund the drug test and supplement companies anyway, companies that are promoting their own brands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Every brand doesn't want to look like they're doing something dodgy. And it wouldn't be dodgy if it was accepted. And that's the problem with it, is it's not accepted by the masses. But if there was education out there, it would be. I guarantee within a couple of years it would be. Now the thing is, when you look at cars, you look at Formula One in the 60s, and you look at Formula One now, much different vehicle, very different. Everything's different on it. The only thing that remains is the wood underneath. The one thing that they kept the same was the wood chassis part. Now, the part of performance was supposed to improve on performance. Do you know how boring the Olympics would be if no one broke a world record? Because it's been broke years ago. It'd be the most boring sport in the planet. We want world records being broke. We want to see people whacking baseballs out the stadium. We want to see football players kicking a ball from the goal and scoring. We want to see these amazing things, but that's not going to happen unless things were in the sport and have already been in the sport. And when you look at the cars, as I said, cars change over the years. It's part of evolution to make us better. I'm all for making human race better, not for trying to say, oh, this is fair, this is fair. Because at the end of the day, whether you have just say sprinter athlete, one sprinter athlete might have better shoes than the other. Neither of them might be taking anything. But do you think it's fair if one sprinter has studs and the other one doesn't? Obviously, that's going to be a big difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
How is that allowed? But performance enhancements aren't. The difference being, performance enhancements aren't going to make you better. You have to make yourself better. All they do is help with recovery. And that's what a lot of people don't realise. Steroids don't make you stronger. They make you recover quicker. And that's it.
That's just a mic drop, complete
Yeah,
mic drop there.
yeah.
I want to go back a little bit after. I say we've gone on to one of the questions and gone a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a little bit back onto bodybuilding. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a stigma. Yeah, it's a stigma, to be honest. When it comes to bodybuilding, it's a negative thing. So food is negative. The diet is negative. Everything's
Mm-hmm.
negative. You lose. You mentioned testosterone levels. I mean, everything. Females, they can lose their period. They can lose this. I mean, how how do you actually feel when you're let's say 12 weeks before the show? Your food, how high is it? How low is it? What's it for you?
So for me, the whole negative perception from bodybuilding, I'd say, came from a specific athlete has been passed down. It came from Dorian Yates. Now, bodybuilding, when it first came around, was seen as this weird thing, weird attraction. Why are men into muscles wearing shorts and oil? It was seen as like some, at the time, because they were very homophobic at that time. They weren't at the time, but at the time, now it's homophobia. Um, to then, it was more normal, as we discussed earlier with transphobia. Times change. It was seen as that, but as the years went on into like the 80s, it was then seen as the kind of cool thing. You had Schwarzenegger, you had Rambo, like the works, you had them all. And the thing was, what you started seeing with men attracted attention, who had muscles, women who had muscles attracted attention. You've seen some positive things. We had an athlete come along called Dorian Yates, and he used to train in the UK. And he trained in a little basement, very quiet, was very rowdy, was a very introverted person, and didn't want to talk, had no time for media, and he won 5 titles. And from then on, people have this mentality that bodybuilding needs to be a very grungy, depressing, this is not fun sport. Dorian Yates wasn't the best bodybuilder, because if he was, he would have won 8 times like Ronnie Coleman, and that's just fact. He was a phenomenal bodybuilder, but he wasn't the best. Do you know what I mean? There's many ways to go about things, and if you ask Dorian probably today, he'd tell you the power of the mind and mentality. And I'm sure, like the effect of like words, thoughts, we're not even on this plane. Like what we say, think has a massive effect on who we are in life. And he'd agree with that most likely. But he was the reason, I think, behind a lot of the quiet, like sort of mean looking thing.
So when it comes to your food side of things, what is that like? How restrictive are you? Because you mentioned the ketogenic diet before.
Yeah, so for me, what I do is I start off on about 100 grams of carbs. I don't count calories. I have about 220 grams of protein and probably about 70 grams of fat. I'm just going off roughly. And then each week, the one thing that do watch out of them all is the carbohydrates, because it keep the other meals quite constant. I wake up in the morning, I have 6 eggs and maybe a small bit of bacon for the fat. Obviously, it's not the best fat. I'm not saying it is, but I just have that. And then I'll have chicken, green beans, broccoli all day. And then just before training, I'd have a bag of rice or something like that, just to get a couple of carbs in before training. And then as the weeks go on and close to the show, the carbs drop and drop and drop till I'm in ketosis. At which point you get super focused when you're in ketosis. You've got to try it yourself if you haven't. You develop this sort of focus that you've never had before. The first week you feel withdrawal symptoms of feeling awful, keto flu we call it. And then after you get used to that, you become very focused on every single thing you do. Your mood changes. But the problem with ketosis is if you do it for too long, you can make yourself type 1 diabetic. Because what happens is, because you're not putting carbohydrates into your bloodstream anymore, insulin isn't being released. And when insulin isn't being released, your pancreas no longer has to make it. So it goes into suppression state. Now, when you put carbs back into your body, this is where it becomes dangerous if you've made yourself type 1 diabetic, because now you haven't got insulin to break down the blood glucose within your blood. So if you're going to do it, have a nutritionist or someone experienced in it. But a lot of people jump into ketosis and they'll do it for like 8 weeks, 16 weeks, a year. and they're wondering why they've got to inject insulin the rest of their life. It's because they haven't done it safely. These ways of going about it. So for me, I know bodybuilding isn't a healthy sport. I know it isn't. At the end of the day, it may be seen as a healthy sport by some. It's not. But at the end of the day, with like any other sport, with an extreme sport, getting in a Formula One car and going 120 mile an hour around the corner is not safe by any means.
No.
But they do it because they enjoy it. I enjoy looking a set way. I enjoy getting on stage. When I'm on stage, that's me at my guru. Do you know what I mean? That's my ultimate.
So you stepping on that stage is like Lewis Hamilton going on Silverstone.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. It's the same sort of effect.
I get to see them smooth.
And it's quite interesting that you mentioned about the ketones, because I've had a pop about a certain company that I was on a Zoom call when they first when they start bringing it to the UK, because they wanted me to sell it. They wanted me to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And I was working with a couple of athletes then, and they wanted them to do it as well. And I said no. I was asking questions from a nutrition standpoint and saying, how can you supplement ketones?
Mm-hmm.
And the second point is, how do I know that so this drink that you're drinking, missing it out, and they're saying that you're in ketosis within half an hour. Okay.
No.
I agree.
Yeah.
I said to them, how can you be in ketosis for half an hour? They said to me, piss on the stick. Okay. I said, no, I get that, because you've got a couple of ketones in here. It's going in here and I'm pissing it straight back out. Mm-hmm. It's like if I drink a Barocca, I'd piss orange. It's the same. It's gonna come up on the stick that I've got a little bit of ketones in the body to be in a state ketosis. I'm not going to be in a state ketosis. They're now using this drink as a weight loss drink. I don't know if have you heard of the company?
I've heard of little things, but you have to tell me off.
So they use it now as a selling point. A lot of Z-list celebs, a lot of TV rejects, a lot of these people are finding relevance by selling these products and are getting called out for it. And a lot of athletes are now doing it because and I've took one of these sachets, okay? Because when they sent them to the athlete, I said, listen, I'm taking a pre one, I'm taking a post one, because I want to know what you're taking, because you're my athlete, I'm working with you, I need to know. So I took one, went for a run. It's just like having a Red Bull, okay? It's just a load of caffeine. It was, if I'm right, and if I'm wrong, but I think it was something like 1,240% more caffeine than a daily average a human should take.
Ooh.
Okay, and that figure stuck in my head because I looked at the box. If I'm wrong, I will correct it in the notes.
1,200 milligram, roughly.
Yeah, it was ridiculous, and as I say, it was like I was on Red Bull, and I just did not want to stop.
Yeah, it's not good though, is it?
I had the energy from this sachet of caffeine, and people will get into a state because people who are in state ketosis, I go for it, doing up to you, you do you sort of thing. People come to me and saying, right, I want to lose weight, I'm going to go on keto. Right, can I be in keto in 3 weeks? Can I be in keto in a week? Depends.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it?
Usually between 10 to 12 to 14 days, you're probably starting into proper ketosis. Then you get a message then, 3 days in, I'm in ketosis, mate, I'm feeling great.
You're not in ketosis then, are you?
No, do you know what I mean? And then 2 weeks later, just like eating bread and eating this, that, and the other, and you're never going to get into it. And it's a lot of people get the misconception from
being in ketosis does not feel fun for a while. It really doesn't. You get, as you know, keto flu. So when you get keto flu, you feel horrendous, and the reason you feel bad is because you're having withdrawal symptoms from sugars and carbohydrates, as would a person who had an addiction to cocaine feels coming off cocaine. That it's withdrawal. And it's shocking because the thing is, people at that then point panic and they shove the carbs in.
Yeah.
Which then makes it twice as worse, because now you've set yourself back many days, and all you've done is now make your insulin spike, which makes you fatter.
Yeah, and when I was working with Till, when we did his camp last year for the UFC, the first 2 weeks, we did a ketosis thing just to bring a little bit of water weight down because the weight gap would have been ridiculous weight cut. And that all it was. And there was a lot of people and a lot of nutritionists and scientists going in on it. And fair play from your science book. You were right. Doing you need the carbohydrates. It's an energetic sport.
Yeah.
But at that point, it was necessary because we needed to bring the water weight down. That's all it was.
Yeah.
Like nothing else. We were 12 weeks out. I mean, 2 weeks on. We didn't even touch ketosis. It was just bringing water weight down, reducing the carbs, and a lot of people were went a bit mad on it. One question I do have though, the tan. What's this all about?
Oh yeah, so right, okay. So when you're on stage, I don't know if you've ever played a musical instrument or you've ever been on like a theatre stage, but when you're on stage, the heat lamps above you drain you out. Now, I'm gonna say it quite brutally, and this is the only way people understand it. Now, in the porn industry, there's something called the BBC. Now, they think it's bigger. It's not bigger. The reason it looks bigger is because it's darker. Now, anything that's grainy, veiny, and tight skin that's darker looks bigger. Yeah?
There we go.
That's the truth behind it. Now, the thing is, when you're a bodybuilder and you're on stage, you've worked for so many weeks and months and years to look this way. You're not going to want to show it to the best you can possibly show. Or do you want to show it worse, getting under the spotlight, bright white, when there's a guy who's next to you of darker skin, who looks worse than you do because he's darker skin. He looks better than you do. It's not really fair, is it? So what they do is, even people of darker skin put fake tan on a bodybuilding stage. A lot of people don't know that. Yeah. And the reason they do it is to make their whole body the same color if they can.
Right.
To the judges. So that's actually to make it fair for everyone. So everyone tries to get roughly like a dark color. But yeah, that's the basis behind it. Because when you get on stage and you're a white person, you look awful under the lights. That's all it is.
What about wearing socks on stage then?
Oh yeah. So this one was just the worst ever, you know. So I knew I was getting on stage, right? And I literally said to the competitor, "Oh God, I'm gonna end up forgetting and leaving my socks on," and I laughed it off. I walked out with my socks on, and as I walked out, I'm on UKB's TV, and I off the judge, walked out with his socks on. That's a first. I was like, no, and then knew at that point I was like, oh.
Just carry on as normal.
I whipped them off in front of everyone, rolled them up in a ball, and just threw them. I'll find the footage for you. But yeah, I rolled them up in a ball and threw them. And at the time, the best bodybuilder in, arguably the best or second, whatever, was there at the time. He was a pro bodybuilder called Luke Santo, and he burst out laughing. And after I'd done the place at that show, I went backstage, and he made an effort. He came up to me, shook me hand, we got a picture and that. He's like, "Well done, you look boss." And I was like, "Yeah," because that was my little idol in bodybuilding at the time. He said to me, "Do you know what I'm gonna do?" Because he was doing the guest posing for like the audience, and he went, "Might just come out with me socks on," and walked away giggling. I was like, "Oh, you got me." Do you know what I mean? Funny time, like, but yeah.
Mate, you embraced it though, didn't you?
Yeah, I just laughed it off because I was like, at least I'll get remembered for it. Do you know what I mean? If anything, you want to get remembered for something funny, don't you?
Yeah, no, of course you do, and it's that connection with the people watching as well. They were like, "Oh, remember that lad with the socks on?" Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, at least
and you might be in town one day and someone will come up to you like, "I remember seeing you on stage."
Yeah, exactly. That's the plan.
So not only that you're raising awareness with Tourette's, you're also on a petition at the moment, and this is something I strongly agree with. With the NHS about pets, that they should be covered under the
100%.
I think that personally, I think that we should it should come out with a wage, or it should come out with something that we pay for NHS and it covers the house. do you know what I mean, like house insurance or car insurance, I think we should look and go, right, this is what we're paying for. You would
Yeah,
see a lot less people in the surgery if we had
yeah.
to pay for it.
hmm
You would
The
see
thing
we'd
is,
see a lot more operations get done because we
yeah,
would, do you know what I mean, we'd be able to afford everything. And
mhm.
the pet side of things, I fully agree with.
Yeah, I do. I think there's so much out there where how can it be justifiable to a world where we're allowing pets, which are family to everyone. I see my dog as a brother. I don't see him as my pet. Do you know what I mean? I see him as a brother. Now, how can it be justifiable to a veterinary surgery to force you to take money, or you sit there and watch your dog suffer? And if you watch the dog suffer, who then is going to jail for animal abuse?
Yeah,
It's it's either you have the money or you're in trouble. So how can that be justifiable? Or then people who, this is not against people in this circumstance because obviously COVID stuff,
yeah,
but people who don't have jobs have the RSPCA. But as you know, if you work, you're not just paying for your house, you're paying for your kids, you pay. There's so many things. Your money may come in, but it goes out just as quick
yeah,
as it's gone in on your bills. How can it be justifiable for you to have to afford this massive payment that you can't afford physically for your own life to put food on the table to make sure your pet like is healthy? It's not right of like as far as the government's concerned. Do you know what I mean? For me personally, I love my animals. I love them, and as much as I'm a big bodybuilder who eats all protein and stuff like that, for me, like your pets around you are 24/7. Do you know what I mean? Like they're the only thing that generally care about you. And I guarantee, obviously, within people like Parliament, they have the money for vets, so they don't have an issue.
yeah,
But that doesn't make it right for people who really struggle and are very lonely and maybe have a job, but they're at home alone and the only family they have is a pet, to watch that pet suffer. And that's something that's not on their cause. For me personally, that's cruelty within our government because we pay a heavy sum for our taxes compared to other countries. We pay a heavy sum. If you look at the roads outside, I pay road tax. I'm banging more divots in that road than you believe. Do you know what I mean?
I'm the same with it, don't worry. I'm
It's a joke, innit?
like a
And we're
Mario
just
Kart track on there.
innit? Like
Swerving.
it's bad. So our money's obviously not going to no road taxes. It's not at all. Do you know what I mean? They're getting money from parking charges. I got fined last week for parking somewhere for 5 minutes for like 70 quid. People are doing that every single day. They're making millions and not one of it's going on that road properly. You see workmen on them roads, and we know, in fact, I'll rephrase that. You see cones of workmen on the
I
roads
was
with no
going to
work.
say this.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Nothing's getting done. Where I think if our taxes should be spent properly, at least save the things that are closest to us, which are pets. But that's just me.
Mate, I couldn't agree more, you know.
Yeah,
And my girlfriend's a dog groomer, so she will be very, very strong on that as well. And
yeah, I love
if
that.
I was to say any crossword there wouldn't be well with me. So, and having pets, and say we've got 2 cats and a dog, so I know exactly what you mean. If anything was to
Yeah,
happen, it'd be like, and especially if we weren't in a financial thing, I mean, it'd be
it's tough,
devastating.
innit?
Especially
Yeah,
a lot of the elder people you see as well, who may have lost a loved one, have got
mm,
pets to keep them company.
yeah,
Might not have 3-4 grand for a dog to have a hip surgery or
mm,
something like that. And
yeah,
I think that if, as a society, if we're putting a little bit extra into, even if it turned from being a house tax to like a family tax, or
yeah.
like so as everything in the house was protected as such, um, it'd be very interesting.
It was. I think that GoFundMe page would be amazing for it because do you know what I mean? Because then people would be putting money in, like even like people putting like a quid in. If these like a million people putting a quid in, there's £1 million there. How many dogs could you save with that? Do you know what I mean? You mightn't be able to save them all, but at least you're doing more than what the government's doing for them, I
Yeah,
suppose. Do you know what I mean? That's just the way I see it. But we'll see how that goes and how that
yeah.
pans out. But yeah,
But
we'll
what I
definitely have
will
to
do
do.
as well, I'll put the link for that petition into the notes as well.
Oh
So
yeah, appreciate
when
that.
people go on Spotify, YouTube, Apple and
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
it'll be in the notes. And
Well,
if you are
hopefully,
listening,
yeah,
if you are
we've got to
listening,
speak.
Go on.
I went, so we've got to see how it pans out because they're checking over at the government now to see it.
Right.
So if it's all good go, I'll let you know.
Yeah, and as I say, if we do have a link, and if you've got a pet and you don't sign it, then you're a shithouse.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Keep it simple, innit?
A couple of
Yeah.
questions we've been put through, and I've kind of touched on a few of them throughout the thing. Why did you go for Japanese Jiu-Jitsu versus Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and what's the difference? Because I've only just started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so I don't know the difference myself, but it's a question.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, I was just put into Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. It wasn't called Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, it was just called Jiu-Jitsu.
Right.
So the main difference is the reason behind Jiu-Jitsu was used for samurais when they lost the sword. So it's war. It's based about war.
Right.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, as you probably know by now, is all ground technique and maneuvers and stuff and locks and stuff. Where Jiu-Jitsu originally came from, it was the original, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that was all about the second the samurai lost the sword, how would he deal with his own hands? And obviously, it's all based about weaponry. So if someone come up to stab them, slash them, so forth, what would they do to either get the sword back off them or so forth? But the reason I prefer Japanese Jiu-Jitsu is because it's more practical in a street scenario.
Okay.
Where BJJ is not very practical because once you go down, people start kicking you. As good as you are on the floor, someone's going to boot you in the head. And that's my only basis upon it. Where Japanese Jiu-Jitsu is more about how do you get them to the floor, and if they're on the floor, lock them quick, because you don't want to stay on the floor, but you can if you need to.
Yeah.
But the difference between BJJ and Judo was they both came from Japanese Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
But Judo took the stance on how to take them down,
Yeah.
and BJJ took the stance of what to do when they're down.
Right.
But they all trifecta to the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu.
Right.
So that's why I personally prefer it.
It does make sense from what you're saying with the street side of things,
Yeah.
especially this day and age. I mean, there's
Yeah.
that much going on, and I personally think that it should be in high schools. That it should be a class.
Yeah, mandatory.
That should be boxing, jiu-jitsu. If it's wrestling, if it's anything in America, you see a lot of it, and I mean college wrestling and stuff. And this is why a lot of Americans don't fight as in hands and fight with guns, because they know that they're both going to be good on the ground.
Yeah.
So the only advantage they're going to have is a gun.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying in Britain we should alternate to guns, no, but what I'm saying is we should have some form of defense, and we'd see a lot less attacks. We'd see a lot less. Like,
it releases aggression too, doesn't it? Like, we have pent up aggression, and when, as I said, in school with testosterone, it does make you more aggressive as a teenager. You get very touchy as teenagers with like little things and noises. So them kids have that little burst out of aggression, and it's obviously allowed. Kids who don't do it generally are the ones who end up in fights at school or getting hurt, because they just need to vent it. And if there's no gym for them to push the weights out, there's no boxing for them to hit the pad, or no jiu-jitsu to flip them and so forth, how are they going to get it out? It's just going to affect mental health, because that's an innate primate like action at the end of the day. We're still animals at the end. Do you know what I mean? We're still animals.
I strongly believe that inside every single person is a demon. And for me now, when I go to jiu-jitsu, I feel like I'm so happier after being doing it. It's not like I've gone in there to hurt anyone or anything like that, but it's like I just feel like, I just don't feel like this short little angry man that's got a shoulder. I mean, and I think you see it in a lot in clubs and nightclubs and stuff. It's always, and I might, if you are fit in this category, I apologize, but it's always the shortest person who starts the fights.
Yeah, it's same with the dogs as well.
Stereotypically, okay, and I'm a short person, so I can say it.
I'm only short as well. I'm only 5'8", so.
Yeah, I'm the same. Well, I say 5'9" to my girlfriend.
Every inch counts.
Every inch counts, of course. And it's one of them where it's always the shorter people that push through and all this and that. And because they've not released their demons, they've not got released that anger, and they've get a couple of beers or they get a line of Charlie, whatever they're doing, and all of a sudden the 10
I've
minutes.
got my own theory on it as well.
Go on.
This is it could be a lie, whatever, but this is just my theory on it. I think the reason small people are more angry is because we all have the same rough level of testosterone, being males. But
Right.
obviously, there's a big variant between. But a guy who's 6'2", who's releasing 100 milligram, nanogram, whatever, he's releasing, and then you have a guy who's 5 foot tall releasing the same amount of testosterone.
Yeah.
One's gonna feel it more than the other. It's the same with a beer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No. Fair. I don't know. I'd accept.
That's what I think it is. I think he's not more hormone, just the way they respond to the hormone, because there's a lot more for their body weight and pounds and so forth.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I'd accept that theory.
Yeah.
One thing that got sent into us was I think you should both do a joint video doing strength training, alternating between strength training towards jiu-jitsu and Japanese jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu and Japanese jiu-jitsu. So
Yeah.
I'm currently doing workouts now in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So a lot of things that will benefit me when it comes to jiu-jitsu. So a lot of floor press, sort of like glute bridges, floor pressing sort of things, hex bar deadlifts and stuff. And this was very interesting because I was in the middle of doing a workout when this message came through, and I was like, is this person watching me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where is he?
What you're doing, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the best exercise for the whole of jiu-jitsu would be, I think it'd be rows, cable rows.
Yeah. Strong.
100%, because you use your back more than any other muscle when you're doing jiu-jitsu, whether it's flipping someone, whether it's pulling back, armbar, whether it's whatever you're doing, you're using your back nearly all the time. So I think the two best for me personally would be like a machine like leg press, because that's your full body force rather than just a squat, and rows.
Yeah. Another one I was thinking was pull-ups, because once again, obviously working the back, but one I've really been working on was the floor press glute bridges. And that's because when you're bridging, you're pushing, or trying to push the person off your chest and such, and trying to bridge it. So that was quite an interesting thing. I'm all game for that, me.
It's awesome,
it'd be very interesting as well.
Yeah,
I'll help you with the smaller dumbbells and all that.
Yeah.
I'm only small, so I'm allowed to make jokes, I guess. So first of all, what is the future? What does the future hold for you? So we all know that the biggest show when it comes to bodybuilding is Mr. Olympia. If you go back a little bit on my Instagram, I've already won it. Okay. It was in Mr. Olympia, and I put my face on someone else's body, so I've already won it. But is that the goal for you? Do you want to?
I'm going to say it out because I do believe there's power within my words. I fully believe that there is a possibility one day I could win it. Now, loads of people think that, no, you know what I mean? But if I don't say it, I've got to believe it to get there, do you know what I mean? So for me, the dream is Mr. Olympia. I've got to get the pro card first. I've got my goals in place.
Okay.
I've got to win another show, get me pro card after that next show, after that. Then I go on, win a big show, say like the California Pro or the British Grand Prix, something like that, and then qualify for the Olympia, and then go do the Olympia in classic physique. But that's my personal goal. Whether you've got the same goal as me, someone out there, good luck to you. See how it goes, innit? But for me personally, that's my dream. So my future, I hope one day I'll be able to do another one of these with you and be like, yeah, I got it.
Look at this, I've got it. Mate, that'd be unreal.
You know what I mean?
But you mentioned a pro. What's the difference between being an amateur and a pro then? Because
money.
A lot.
Yeah. So a pro show, you could win, say, like 20 grand. It's obviously all in dollars, but it's not just the 20 grand cash check. You get your sponsorships, your contract, that they all come in, they're mega money. You then get your notoriety, but you get your fame, so you can do YouTube and get a lot of followers very easily. You can do interviews with major bodybuilding shows, TV pro job. It's open opportunity.
Right. And
so
how do you get a pro contract? Is it pro contract, pro license? How do you
yeah,
get that?
pro card. You've got to win a set competition held by a set federation, to pro. It is in the UK, and you've got to win the main title where it offers it, and only one or two people have given it. Even if you win, you mightn't get it. So hopefully one day I'll win it and do get it. That's the goal.
So that would be you would rather win it and get it than not win anything and then get it, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it'd be a bittersweet.
Yeah, and the thing is, I want to go up against the best. I want to. People are like, no, we won it against the way. I want to be against the best to prove I'm going to be the best. Because if I want to be the best in the world, I want to damn make sure ain't no one beating me.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. So for now, I'm not going to be
Is it just like different weight categories then, is it?
No, just different categories. Well, they can be weight categories, but mine's not necessarily bodybuilding. Right. You've got men's physique where they wear the little board shorts and hide the quads and don't show the legs. I show me legs, but mine's more to do with symmetry and shape and condition, where the main bodybuilders are mainly after size and condition.
Right.
But mine's more like the 70s bodybuilder. That's the 70s, 80s bodybuilder. But that's my goal. I wanted to look like Arnie as a kid, so I want to make sure. Do you know what I mean? That's the goal. But yeah, we'll see how it goes, innit?
Yeah, fair enough. So one question I want to ask you before you go. If you were a fighter or if you were a boxer, an MMA fighter, what would be your walk-in song?
That'd be cool, like, you know. Do you know what? It'd have to be a Viking tune, you know.
With the hair.
I feel like I had my hair quite well, this little bun, but it's long. It'd definitely be a Viking tune. Or it's a good question. I've never really thought about that. Or Here Comes the Boom, Joe, just for the sake of it.
Yeah. Would it be like when the Iceland in the Icelandic clap?
Yeah.
Just get that as a starter, and then Here Comes the Boom.
See, me girlfriend's Norwegian, so like obviously the Vikings all there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And is that the influence for the hair then, or?
No, well, I wanted this for years when the Vikings TV show came out because I'm ginger. I am the Viking, so I was like, I want to look like Ragnar,
but better.
Yeah, but better. Yeah, a proper Viking. So yeah, that was the goal.
Before I go, and I'll be pissed off if I miss these two questions. Do you get a lot of injuries being with bodybuilding? Do you, like, obviously if you don't do your sets properly and stuff, you might get do you get a lot of injuries?
I've had little niggles here and there. I've pulled muscles like my bicep a little bit. I've pulled my chest a little bit, but nothing like where it's off the bone. I've only done little tears. However, I've known young lads to do major tears. There was one quite recently where he tore his chest. Now, the truth behind that is because I'm not going to say him specifically, but a lot of them are on cycle for far too long, and the ligaments and tendons don't keep up with the muscle growth. And when you get fast muscle growth very quickly, your tendons and ligaments aren't repaired and growing at the same rate. So it only takes one little click and you'll tear something off the bone. So do everything safely. And the thing is, a lot of bodybuilders do tear the top level. They end up getting injuries. So that's only because they're at the extreme of the sport. It's kind of like how motocross riders have always crashed. Every motocross rider's crashed, but the ones at the top level seem to have the real bad crashes.
Yeah, they push it that little extra.
Yeah.
And last question before we close it up. Yeah. After your shows, what is your favourite meal, go-to meal?
A big fat burger.
Really?
Just keep it, yeah. Just a good old burger. Very simple like that.
Triple layer or quad layer?
Yeah. These pictures of me somewhere I'm eating a quad one. Yeah. So burger and cheesecake.
Any flavour cheesecake, or is it just?
I'm basic again, so.
Right.
No, I'm lying. I'd have a sticky toffee pudding, sticky toffee cheesecake. It's gotta be all day. Sticky toffee cheesecake.
Right, fair. Listen, what an episode! Thank you very much, mate.
Yeah,
What I mean,
been a
it's
pleasure.
given me, and it'll definitely give a lot of listeners the insight of all of this,
Yeah,
because
definitely.
there's a big perspective about bodybuilding being negative, bodybuilding being bad, steroids being bad. But doing
Yeah.
I'm not condoning saying, right, everyone out there now,
Same with it.
go out and do steroids. I'm not saying this. This is
Yeah,
disclaimer now. Do not. I mean, it's not me saying that. It's me just saying it gives a different limelight to it, if that makes sense.
yeah.
And when you mentioned about moving forward and stuff, it makes sense.
Mhm.
And for someone to have a license and just do it, it would be a lot safer as well.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Where can people find you then? So obviously you're really active on your Instagram, but where can
Yeah,
people find you?
best place to ever find me is just Instagram, and just keep simple at Connor Page Bodybuilder. That's it.
Yeah, no problem. And once again, thank you everyone for listening. If you are on Apple Music, don't forget to hit the 5-star review. Yeah, Connor, thank you very much, my friend.
See you later, mate.
Ta-ra, mate. Ta-ra.